The daily news. Pew pew. De Ligt edges closer to Juventus. Benfica receive a huge offer for Joao Felix. Crystal Palace is set to make some massive money. Mo Salah fires Egypt into the next round, and we've got a roundup of all the day's transfer rumours. That and more coming up in the next few minutes, as I am your host, Matt De Ligt. You are the Onefootballers, and this is the Daily News. So first off, and to Matthijs De Ligt, who after a summer of speculation looks like he could finally be joining a club. That is Juventus. Apparently they're offering to make him one of the best players in the world, with a deal of around 300,000 euros per week basic that could rise to around 440k per week. Mental for a 19-year-old. On top of this, the deal will be running for 5 years with a release clause around 150 million euros. Despite PSG and Barcelona both being interested in the defender, it seems that Juve have stolen the march. Maybe it's something to do with what Cristiano Ronaldo said to him at the end of their Champions League tie earlier in the season. Alongside this though, Juve will of course have to negotiate with Ajax on a price for the defender, and it's believed to be around 70 million. There is one sticking point though. If they're willing to pay for Paul Pogba as well as this, they're going to have to raise money from elsewhere. So instead of paying so much for De Ligt, they're apparently going to offer Moise Kean, their striker, in return for the Dutch defender. Of course, this isn't ideal because Moise Kean has been one of the brightest talents in Serie A, and they don't want to lose such a good young prospect. But with Cristiano Ronaldo up front, it's obvious that Kean won't be getting much game time within the upcoming season, so they might as well let him go for one hell of a centre-back. So next up, and to Benfica, who are seriously considering an offer of 126 million euros for their starlet Joao Felix. Now, not only is this a ridiculous amount of money, it's also going to be the second highest amount paid for a teenager in footballing history, behind the 180 million paid for Kylian Mbappe. Alongside Mbappe, Neymar, Ousmane Dembele and Coutinho, he will be the fifth most expensive signing ever. This is pretty incredible from a team like Atletico Madrid, who haven't always been associated with some of the biggest transfers in football. For example, the other four on that top 5 list of expensive transfers are both from either PSG or Barcelona. Now, for me, this seems a little bit crazy. I've no doubt that he is a fantastic talent and he'll go on to be a big player. He did score 15 goals this season. I'm just not sure he's worth so much money. As to why he's going for 126 and not his agreed release clause of 120, well, that's because Atletico Madrid want to pay in installments, so obviously Benfica won't get all of the money at once. It's been a poor summer for Atletico Madrid as they've lost some big players. Diego Godin said he'll be leaving at the end of his contract. Rodri is on the verge of joining Manchester City, and we all know that Antoine Griezmann wants to leave. So bringing in a big player for big money is just enough to get the fans back on the side of Diego Simeone and the rest of the club. And because we're talking of big money, of course the Premier League is going to be involved, and we're going to go to Crystal Palace, who with the sale of 2 players could earn some big dough. First off, Wan-Bissaka is going to be moving to Manchester United for around £50 million. That's because both clubs have agreed a deal, and he was sent north last night to complete a medical at Manchester United's training ground. The deal will see him also moved up to around £80,000 to £90,000 per week when he was on just 10k per week at Crystal Palace. I say just 10k because that's really little in footballing money. In regular people money, that's obviously a hell of a lot, but he was the lowest paid player in the Crystal Palace squad. This obviously means that Manchester United will have made their second signing of the summer alongside youngster Daniel James, but is a young right back and a young right midfielder really going to solve all of their problems? I don't quite see it so. However, with Crystal Palace, they have already eyed up a replacement that is in the form of Tottenham's Kyle Walker-Peters. Apparently Spurs want 20 million for the 22-year-old. Alongside this though, there's also Wilfried Zaha, who could be leaving the club with Arsenal interested. There has been one stalling point though, and that's the fact that Arsenal can't really afford him with a lower transfer budget than Crystal Palace want. It said they want 80 million for the player who's currently with the Ivory Coast squad in the African Cup of Nations, but Arsenal's failure to make it into the Champions League means that their budget stands between 50 to 60 million pounds. They're going to have to figure out something if they want to take Zaha on a permanent basis. He has said that he sees himself as a Champions League player. Obviously Arsenal aren't in it, but they're going to be close enough next season and definitely fighting for a top 4 spot. If you put those two fees together, Crystal Palace will make an incredible 130 million this summer, which just goes to show that there is actually something to be gained from growing some homegrown talent. But next up and away from a bit of transfer news into the African Cup of Nations, and as I mentioned, the Wilfried Zaha is there, so is fellow Premier League star Mohamed Salah. He has been firing Egypt into the next round of the competition as they now have guaranteed a top 2 finish in their group with a 2-0 victory. This came over DR Congo, where Mo Salah managed to find the back of the net himself to make it 2-0. As for the rest of the game though, he did look a little bit tired, and that's probably because he's come off the back of a very long season with Liverpool, pretty much playing every single game. They obviously ran Manchester City to the wire and managed to win the Champions League, which has meant that the Egyptian is going to be pretty tired come next season. If they manage to go all the way to the final of the Cup of Nations, it means that Salah's season will literally end just over 4 weeks before the Premier League season starts. To make it even worse, Liverpool do have the opening game as they host Norwich on the Friday night of the first Premier League weekend. I do think the scheduling could be a little bit better when it comes to international competitions. As mentioned, Salah could be absolutely knackered. There's all the players that have been at the Euro under-21s. You've also got all the stars who have been at the Copa America. And on top of this, there's the players that have been in the UEFA Nations League, which ran into the early days of June. Don't forget that loads of Premier League teams have been finished since the first few weekends of May. That is a hell of a long time compared to the players who aren't going to be back until the early stages of July. So lastly but not least, we come to a roundup of all the day's transfer news. And first off, Valencia have agreed to sign Barcelona's number 2 goalkeeper Jasper Cillessen for around 35 million euros. Patrick Vieira, Steven Gerrard and Mikel Arteta are all on Newcastle's shortlist to replace Rafa Benitez. Bayern Munich have held talks with Barcelona and with Ousmane Dembele's agent over a move for the 22-year-old. And lastly but not least, PSG have open talks with AC Milan over a move for their goalkeeper Gigi Donnarumma. So do you think De Ligt will end up at Juventus and be a great signing for them? And what do you make of the huge offer for Benfica's Joao Felix? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Smash the like button whilst you're down there, and also hit the subscribe button if you guys are new around here. We've got loads more content coming up on Onefootball, some of which you can find here or here. So that's it from me for today, but until next time, I will see you guys later.